My parents betrayed me, kicked out of the family business and inheritance to favor their golden child. Now they want my help after losing everything. Hi Reddit, I'm a bit shaken and upset from what happened, so I could use some cheering up and some practical advice to get back on my feet. During the 30 years of my conscious life, I have noticed that my older brother George, 31 male, has always been the golden child of my family. He always got more than me regarding everything. George knew he was the obvious favorite, which is why he developed a superiority complex. He knew no matter what he did to me, my parents would only punish me. It was obvious my parents cared for him a lot more because he got the lion's share of everything unless people like my grandparents and relatives would call them out on it. This is why my parents packed us all up and moved us about 150 miles away from our relatives, so they could only see us on holidays. My brother was physically abusive towards me while we were growing up, and my parents did nothing to stop that. My father would even say that this is how brothers behave with each other and I should toughen up. When I got my first girlfriend, George would flirt relentlessly with her to the point that she got extremely uncomfortable and broke up with me. I had a huge fight with my brother regarding this and even complained to my parents, but they just laughed it off, saying I was being childish. My parents would take him on more vacations while I was left with my grandparents, giving me excuses like they couldn't afford another ticket and they would take me some other time. I didn't mind being around my grandparents, though, because I loved them. George would get whatever he wanted, no matter how expensive it was. When I was 16, I got my driver's license, even though my brother, who was a year older than me, kept failing his driving tests. I was working a part-time job at McDonald's, so I asked my parents if they could help buy me a second-hand car and I would pay them off over the years. But they refused. When my brother finally got his driving license, they immediately bought him a car. I was so shocked and tried to talk to my parents about it, but they said he needed it more than me. When my 18th birthday came, my parents agreed, after much pleading, that they would buy a car for me. When George heard that, he suddenly decided that his car was old for him and he wanted a new car. My parents decided to give me George's old car and buy him a new one. Even though I felt dejected, I accepted it because at least I had a car now to drive to work. I only got equal treatment when my parents had to keep up appearances in front of the rest of the family during their visit. I admit it was rather funny to see the looks on their faces whenever they had to treat me equally to my brother on birthdays and Christmas because other people were present. We had relatives who were very nosy and loved gossiping and drama, so my parents did their best to hide their favoritism and threatened me to keep my mouth shut in front of others. Otherwise, they would take away all my stuff. When my older brother graduated high school, my parents were beside themselves with joy. They showered him with praise, expressing how proud they were of his achievements, and even organized a celebration for him. But when it was time for my high school graduation, my mother was late to arrive, even though she had been at home all along, and my father never even bothered coming. That night during dinner, when I was sulking over their lack of enthusiasm and appreciation for me, they told me that high school graduation wasn't such a big deal and I should get over it. Later, George, who was during this time at university, sent me a message saying how I could never measure up to him and that I should know by now that my parents didn't love me anyway. I remember crying myself to sleep that night. I realized that I could never make my parents love me, no matter how much I tried, so this was the last straw, and I moved out. If anything, it just made my parents celebrate more when I moved out because it meant they no longer had to provide for me. From that point on, I would usually only see my parents and brother on holidays like the rest of the family. At the time, I was working full-time and attending college with the help of scholarships that my parents did not pay for. They didn't even show up for my college graduation, saying things like it would take a lot of time for them to drive and visit me in college. But I didn't really care. Ever since I graduated, I was hired at a nice company in my hometown that paid really well. George, on the other hand, dropped out of university because of his drinking problems. During this time, he started day trading with a few thousand my parents would give him every month. He made an okay amount of money from it and would brag to everyone, but suddenly he had a major loss and lost every cent. My parents, despite this, told him how this was just a learning curve and encouraged him to find a stable job. He jumped from one job to another and finally landed a full-time position that paid quite less than mine did. George and I would barely speak, but whenever we did meet during Christmas, he would always find a way to subtly remind me of his perceived superiority. He would try to imply that his choices were superior to mine, even though the reality spoke otherwise. His lower-paying job and tumultuous personal life contradicted the facade he tried to uphold in front of others. But I didn't mind his taunts, as my well-paid salary spoke for itself. Now, coming on to the story, my father owns a small manufacturing firm that he had started on his own roughly 5 years ago. His manager left in a hurry when they got an offer from a competing company. During this time, my parents were quite worried, since my father was getting old and it would be impossible for him to oversee everything on his own. My father also didn't want to hire someone new and teach them everything from scratch, for them to only leave the company again in a few years. So my father invited both me and my brother for lunch, a rare occasion for the three of us to sit together. I was quite surprised that my father had personally requested me to be there. As we sat around the table, my father got straight to the point. The family business was on shaky ground, and he needed our help. He explained that the manager had left, and he had been struggling to find a replacement. With the business facing tough times and bankruptcy looming on the horizon, my father was desperate for help. He looked at both of us with a plea in his eyes. I kept quiet because even though I would have happily decided to help my father, I knew that he mostly wanted my older brother's help anyway. I waited for George to speak. To my surprise, my brother immediately dismissed the idea. He scoffed at the notion of working in a small family business and claimed that he wasn't interested. His lack of concern for our parents' livelihood was apparent, and it was clear that he saw their business as beneath him. My father kept requesting him again and again, but George told him that he could not risk leaving his job to work for the family when it could all amount to nothing. I could see how hurt my father was hearing this. It was shocking for me too, since I had thought George would jump at the opportunity of taking over the business since my parents favored him so much. My father, growing increasingly anxious, turned to me with hope in his eyes. He told me how he really needed my help and that he couldn't bear closing down his business. I earned quite well, and because I lived alone, I had considerable savings, which I knew could help my parents out. I know I was a fool, but after a moment of contemplation, I decided to step up and accept the challenge. Despite the years of mistreatment and neglect, I couldn't bear to see my father's business crumble. I agreed to help with the intention of turning the struggling business around. I even offered to give up my savings to fund the family business and help grow and expand it. My parents were extremely grateful for my help and thanked me profusely. Fast forward 5 years, and I have poured my sweat and soul into this company. I have established better relationships with our customers and improved our company image and reputation. I helped set up our website so that we could grow internationally. I brought our non-existent documentation into order and established a company quality system close to ISO 9001. I improved the production quality control testing processes so that there weren't so many defects in manufacturing. Hell, I helped our employees with packing, cleaning, and carrying heavy boxes when they were busy or when I had free time, because why not? Throughout all of this, my father did absolutely nothing. He hardly understood technology and would only come to oversee major orders. I was basically the only one handling everything. As the business thrived under my management, my parents gradually began to acknowledge my capabilities. I was confident that eventually I would be the one getting the family business, but I did not mind splitting it with my brother if he ever showed any interest. My relationship with my parents had improved considerably during this time. Even though they didn't blatantly favor me like they had favored my brother, they did respect me more, or so I thought. My grandparents were also happy to see how happy I was, as I was being treated like a son by my parents for the first time. 3 years ago, George had come to my parents to inform them that he was getting married. Everyone was shocked to hear this, since we didn't even know he had a serious girlfriend to begin with. Turns out he met Donna just a month ago and they wanted a shotgun wedding. This was a huge red flag for me, since they hardly knew each other, and I told my brother about it. But he scoffed, saying how I should keep my nose out of his business and that I should not act over-smart just because I earned more than him. After this, I've always stayed out of his life. When George got married, everything changed. My parents were the first ones to be cut off by Donna because she found them too overwhelming and didn't like how they fawned over my brother. George stopped calling or texting back my parents, and I knew how sad it made my mother to not be able to talk to her favorite son. I have no idea what happened with George for those 2 years, but last year, out of nowhere, he suddenly came back home after years of no contact with us. I had no idea that he had come back home, but the next day, when my father didn't show up for a very important meeting, I called him. He informed me how George was back for good. I was taken aback. My dad asked me to come to their place for family dinner as he had something important to talk to me about. There, I was told that my brother's wife, Donna, had cheated on him and left him for another man. I was not surprised to hear this, since Donna did earn more than him, as much as I remembered. Knowing my brother, I knew he could not hold down a job for long. My parents also informed me happily how George was back now for good, since he was getting a divorce. I nodded, not knowing at that time the misfortune that was going to follow. Later in the evening, my father called me and my brother to his study room. Imagine how I felt when my father closed the door, looked me straight in the eyes and said, "Start looking for a job. Your services are no longer needed. From tomorrow, your brother will be taking over your position." I stared at him, dumbfounded, waiting for him to explain further. Instead, my brother then told me that he was finally ready to take over the family business and would be working with Dad. My dad nodded and said that this is why he didn't require me anymore. I sat, feeling confused, as I just couldn't comprehend how easily my dad was removing me from his business when I was the one who had decided to quit my job and help him with all my savings. I looked at my dad and asked him why my brother and I couldn't work together, since this was a family business, and I was the one who had expanded the company so much. I argued that I deserved to have this position, and my brother could start from the bottom so that he could learn the ropes of the business. But George scoffed indignantly hearing this. He told me that I was just a placeholder for him and this business was always going to go to him anyway, so I should stop being so immature about it. I argued with my father, explaining how I had turned our losses into profits, and he could not just do that to me. But my father firmly reminded me that I was an employee, just like everyone else, and he had every right to fire me. He told me that he didn't want to embarrass me further by making me serve a notice period, which is why he wanted this change to be done immediately. I asked my dad if my mother knew about this as well, hoping that maybe she could convince him otherwise. But he nodded, saying that my mother had wanted this all along, since this would mean that my brother could stay with them forever. I was devastated seeing how cruel my family was to me. I couldn't believe that they had used me when they wanted, and were now discarding me once their favorite child was back. I calmly told my father that he needed to pay me back all the savings I had invested in his business so that I would have something for me to start afresh. But my father and brother got pissed hearing this. My brother started asking, how dare I ask our father for my money when our parents had spent so much money on me during my childhood? My dad nodded and said that it was my choice to invest in the family business, and that I should feel ashamed for asking him for it back. My brother then remarked on how ungrateful I was. Hearing this, I lost it and screamed at him. You have no idea what I went through growing up under your shadow, enduring your constant abuse and our parents' blatant favoritism. I've worked tirelessly to save this family business from bankruptcy. And now you think it's unfair for me to ask for what's rightfully mine? My father's face twisted with anger, seeing how I was yelling at my brother. He coldly declared, "You think you deserve money? Your brother is right, you are ungrateful, and I won't give you a single penny or the family business. I will also be removing you from the inheritance because of how greedy you are. Now get out of this house." The weight of his words hit me like a sledgehammer. For the first time in a long time, I felt my heart breaking because of how my family has always continued to treat me. The dream of inheriting the family business and receiving what I believed was rightfully mine shattered before me. My father's anger was palpable, and the denial of both the business and the inheritance felt like a cruel betrayal. I took a deep breath, trying to calm down. I told my dad, "Okay, if that's what you want, I'll go my own way. You can keep your business and money. I'll start from scratch and build my success. One day you'll see you made a mistake." I didn't stick around for their response, filled with more negativity. I just walked out of the house. After that day, they never reached out to me again. My grandparents eventually found out the news of my brother coming back after years of no contact and taking over the business, and how my family had kicked me out. They reprimanded my parents, but it was too late by then. It's been 6 months since I left my family business and stopped all contact with my family. Facing the days that followed was tough. I had to come to terms with the reality of starting over. It hurt knowing my family didn't want me, but it fueled a determination to succeed on my own. At first, finding a job seemed challenging. I hadn't worked a regular job for a long time, and after managing our family business, I realized how good I was at it. Then, a bright idea struck me. I decided to approach companies that were in direct competition with ours. I highlighted my skills and experience, emphasizing how I had successfully managed my family business and turned it around. Surprisingly, a couple of companies were interested in what I had to offer. I went for interviews and eventually one of them offered me a job. It was a fresh start, and I was eager to prove myself in a new environment. The new job was challenging, but I tackled each task with the same determination I had used to save my family business. Slowly, I began to rebuild my life and regain the confidence that had been shattered by my family's rejection. As the months passed, I not only found stability in my professional life, but also in my personal well-being. The absence of toxic family dynamics allowed me to thrive and discover my true potential. Everything was starting to go well in my life when, last week, out of nowhere, my parents contacted me. I ignored their calls at first, but they kept calling and sending me multiple text messages. Eventually, I decided to answer, curious about what they wanted after 6 months of silence. My parents' voices sounded anxious over the phone. They asked me if I could help them out paying their bills this month because their electricity had been cut off. I was taken aback hearing their sudden demand, "No, how are you? It's been a long time," or even an apology. Just straightforwardly asking me to pay their bills. I calmly told them to ask their successful son to pay them, and not to disturb me again. Hearing this, my mother on the other line started crying. Then I was told how the family business was now in serious financial trouble and on the verge of bankruptcy. My father went on to say how they needed my help desperately. It turns out my parents have, Lost everything thanks to the golden boy, who used nearly 90% of my parents' savings, plus retirement, in investing in crypto and day trading. He convinced them to invest it all in crypto at the beginning of the year, and they listened, thinking how their money would triple. But one market crash and rug pull later, it's all gone. George was also failing miserably in the family business, and all the workers hated him. He clearly had no idea how to manage everyone, which was no surprise, and the family business had lost a lot of contracts and major clients. I couldn't help but laugh bitterly at the irony of the situation. After years of mistreatment, my parents had the audacity to expect me to come to their rescue. I told them that I was not going to forget how they kicked me out of the family business and inheritance, so they should forget calling me ever again. My parents tried to argue back, saying that I owed them for everything they had done for me during my childhood and that I should be a better son to them. I was getting so pissed at their audacity, so I took a moment to collect myself and calmly reminded them of the years of favoritism, mistreatment, and the savings I had invested in their business, which they had never paid me back for. I pointed out how I had turned their struggling business into a thriving one, all the while being treated as a mere employee. I warned them that if they ever contacted me again, I would take them to court to force them to pay me for the savings I had invested in their business and force them to sell their house to pay me back. The conversation quickly turned into a heated argument when my parents heard this, but I stood my ground and firmly told them that I wouldn't be coming to their aid, no matter how much they cried about it. It felt liberating to finally stand up for myself and reject their demands. I couldn't believe the audacity of my parents to think I would forget years of mistreatment and come running when they needed help. I ended the call, knowing that I had made the right decision for my own well-being. Since then, I have received messages and calls from them, my brother, and other relatives, saying how I should help them out and that I'm being too cruel. Only my grandparents, with whom I stayed as a child while my parents went on vacation, have stood by my side, knowing how my parents have behaved with me over the years. Aitia for refusing to help my family out now that they have lost everything thanks to their golden boy. Update 1. I wanted to express my heartfelt gratitude for the overwhelming support and encouragement I have received from this community. Your words have been a source of strength during this challenging time, and I appreciate every comment and message that has come my way. It means more to me than I can adequately express. The reason all my relatives have found out about this is because my parents reached out to one of their cousins for help when I refused, instead of telling them the entire story about how my brother was behind their business going bankrupt. They told him how my brother was trying to work a way to support them at such a tough time, while I had blatantly refused to pay their bills. They straight up lied, knowing that I would be blamed by everyone just to not embarrass my brother. I agree with everyone that I should not keep my mouth shut anymore, since what my parents have done to me cannot be forgiven or forgotten. After taking some time to reflect on the situation and discussing it with my grandparents, who have been a consistent source of support throughout my life, I have decided to clarify things with my extended family this weekend. I plan to address the years of mistreatment, the unjust removal from the family business, and the financial investment I made in my parents' struggling enterprise that was never acknowledged. It's time to set the record straight and make my side of the story known. I will update you once I have informed everyone. Update 2. So, as I had updated earlier, I wanted to address all my relatives' misconceptions, and I did just that. This morning, I sent a mass email to everyone who had sent me a message or called me to ask why I wasn't helping my parents out in their tough time. In the email, I shed light on the years of suffering I had endured under my parents' roof, detailing the mistreatment, the blatant favoritism, and the unfair expulsion from the family business and inheritance when their golden child returned. I wrote exactly how much savings I had invested in the family business and how my parents kicked me out without paying a penny back to me. It was crucial for me to clarify the reasons behind my decisions and to ensure that everyone understood the reality of my experiences. I have to admit that after sending out the email, I feel much lighter because now everyone knows my side of the story. I don't know if my relatives will believe me, but regardless of whatever they choose to believe, I just wanted to speak my truth. Update 3. It's been 3 months since my last update, and I wanted to share some positive developments in my life. Following the mass email I sent to my relatives, some of them reached out to apologize, expressing their shock and sympathy for the years of mistreatment I had endured and how they had no idea about it. It was validating to hear their understanding and support, since my parents had hidden this so well from everyone. These relatives also took it upon themselves to reprimand my parents for their actions. Although I don't know exactly what they said, my parents and brother tried to reach out to me multiple times, even sending messages about how childish and immature I was for talking about family matters to others. I decided to send them a final message saying how I was done with them and that I didn't care if they even ended up on the streets. I warned them again to not contact me ever again and about the possibility of legal action if they persisted. I blocked them after that, and surprisingly, they haven't had the guts to contact me further. On a personal note, my job and life are going well, and I've recently started therapy to help process and navigate the lingering effects of my past experiences. It's a journey of healing, and I'm grateful for the support I've found in various aspects of my life. I visit my grandparents whenever my work schedule allows me to, and they are the only family I acknowledge and ever need. Thank you all for being a part of this ongoing chapter in my life. Every one of your encouragements has played a significant role in my journey toward reclaiming my life and happiness.